Hello there, welcome to saberduelgaming, where we always take the high ground. Back in April 2022, I did my retro review of Starfox back on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was only about the 5th retro review I ever did. Now it's time to return to this franchise as I do my retro review of Lylatwars, or as it was otherwise known, Starfox 64. This 1997 release was a follow-up to the 1993 original, and in this you were quickly given a view of a massive system of planets that your adventure could take you through. I say could take you through because you would go a different route depending on the options you chose or just how the gameplay progressed. It wasn't always a direct choice, it was more likely what you did would lead you one way or the other, which was really good for replay value. Also, the game took on an entirely different approach. As well as having the direct flight combat, we also had all-terrain vehicles like the tank, and we also had different ways of playing. At certain points, we would go into a open world where you didn't actually fly on rails. You chose which direction you flew in, giving you a lot more maneuverability. It also gave a fair range more options and variety in the gameplay. Unlike the original Starfox game, which was in 3D as a massive novelty, this game, well, 3D was kind of par of the course. Nintendo 64 made everything in 3D. But this game did still continue to push the boundaries. We had the ability to see the gameplay from the cockpit, and the graphics were far more detailed than what we saw in the original Starfox game, which was what we'd come to expect. That said, the vast majority of the gameplay stuck with the simple idea of the original. It was, for the most part, an on-the-rails shooter. You flew through space or across a planet, or in some levels drove across a planet, automatically moving forward or having the ability to go up, down, left, right, zoom forward or brake while shooting like crazy, and of course doing a barrel roll. The cutscenes were stunning, and for the first time we got to see the master ship which the Starfox team traversed the galaxy in. Particularly impressive. Again, this game, like the original, continued to have ongoing conversation between the different members of Team Starfox. Slippy was the most likely to get into trouble, but would always be very grateful and tell you how awesome you are. Peppy would constantly refer to your father and how much like him you are, although we never really feel like we get clear understanding of his backstory and what his father has to do with it. Falco, of course, is just a bit of a prick and will get into trouble when you help him. He'll just have an attitude. No one likes Falco. Unlike the original Starfox, however, this game also introduces a bunch of other characters. A kind of evil Starfox team, which is like the Team Wolf? Wolf team? Captain Wolf? Something like that. And other members that are clearly, there you go, Bill, the Sometime. Other characters such as Bill, who you clearly have a previous relationship or friendship with, that you again interact with. It's quite cool, and it certainly pads out the universe beyond the 4 members of your team. The game basically takes everything that the first one did well and makes it even more beautiful. It makes it far more detailed, gives it far more depth, and adds a whole range of stuff that we didn't see. The 3D open range mode is so much fun and makes it feel like a scene from Independence Day. In fact, in a couple of scenes, they feel like they are directly taken from Independence Day. Of course, being able to drive around in a tank gives something different, as does the ability to fly in the cockpit. We also, of course, have the fact that this is the first time we have a 2-player mode in Starfox, which is one of the best additions to the game. Being able to get inside your ship and go up against one of your best friends, even back when you were using some tiny little monitor, was so cool. The game also has a training mode thrown in there, which gotta be honest, I spent a lot of time using, just trying to get better and better at the game. So with all that being said, how was this game received when it was released? Well, one thing to throw in here is that, as I mentioned, the original Starfox game, because of that Super FX chip, had graphics that were above and beyond anything that could possibly be considered for the SNES. It pushed boundaries in a way that no other game possibly did. Lylatwars didn't really do that. The graphics were massive improvements, of course, and they were stunning, but they were also kind of what we'd come to expect from the Nintendo 64, so it didn't have that huge novelty. Instead, it had to get by on what they actually made in this game. Fortunately, what they made was pretty damn good, and everyone saw that. The absolutely lowest score I could find for this game was an 8.3 out of 10, leveling out at about 83%. But that really was an outlier. The vast majority of the scores were in the 90s, and many of them were in the mid to upper 90s. You're talking 95 to 98%. Massive scores, but those scores alone aren't even the biggest accolades this game got. Lylatwars was the second best selling game of the year, second only to Mario Kart 64, and let's be honest, that is nothing to be ashamed of. On its release in the US, within the first 5 days, 300,000 copies had been sold, which did actually break the records which had been set by Mario 64 and the aforementioned Mario Kart 64, so Lylatwars still had Mario Kart 64 beat there. EGM in 1997 named it as its Shooter of the Year, and also put it in its top 100 games. Even going into 2009, Nintendo Magazine identified it as one of the best Nintendo games ever made, and actually ranked it in 14th place. This is over 10 years after the game was released. The only two pieces of criticism I could find was the aforementioned point that it wasn't quite the leap forward that the original Starfox had been, and one other comment which I think is kinda fair, but also not Starfox's fault, which is that the two-player mode is maybe a little bit of a waste, as most people didn't have screens big enough for the two-player mode to really be appreciated. However, I don't think the game's at fault for that particular factor. But on my most recent playthrough, how does the game stack up? How does this game hold up to modern scrutiny? Well, as with many Nintendo 64 games, this game holds up really well, but I would argue that whilst a lot of the cuter games like Mario and Mario Kart don't quite hold the beauty they used to, this game, with its slightly more gritty look, stands up pretty damn well. The graphics are probably a bit too angular for younger modern gamers, but on the whole, this game is still visually very impressive, and the gameplay, whilst it takes a couple of minutes to get back into again, is really, really fun. It took me a while to jump between the different types of flight, as it had been a while since I played it, but once I was in that zone, it was amazing fun. The size and scale of the bosses was so impressive. The fact that I could complete a level but then go back and do it again and take me to a different level, it really encouraged me to go back and replay levels time and again. Going back now as well, I probably appreciated the relationship between the different characters a lot more than I did as a kid. When I played this back in the day, I just got mildly annoyed by them constantly chatting to me, whereas this time round as a retro gamer, I found myself thinking, man, Slippy, I kind of missed you. It's like reconnecting with an old friend. Even some of the villains in this, I was like, damn, I remember this guy. So much fun, and I really can't believe it's taken me this long to really go back and play this game. One last point on this game which I hadn't mentioned was the rumble pack. Obviously the fact that control pads have some sort of feedback is taken for granted now, but on the Nintendo 64 it was new. The Nintendo 64 itself didn't actually come with any sort of rumble feature. However, when you bought Lylatwars, you came with a rumble pack that you could insert into the pad. that actually gave us that feedback. When your ship got hit, when you were hit by a bomb, when you fired, you felt it, and that was brand new. Obviously that's something we take for granted now, to the point where I almost forgot that that was a part of this game's release. However, at the time, being able to plug that in and actually feel the gameplay for the first time, that was a massive leap forward, and that pack was something you then used in a lot of other games going forward. So maybe Lylatwars actually did push the boundaries of gaming a little bit more than maybe we gave it credit for. Whether you know this game as Lylatwars or Starfox 64, it's a stone cold classic. The Nintendo 64 gave us so many great games and graphics that were so impressive that we often take many of them for granted. Going back to play this game again, I genuinely can't believe it's been so long since I played it, and I have no qualms about giving it a 9 out of 10 score. A few minor tweaks here or there would make it perfect, but very little could be done to improve it. An absolute classic, and a game that now I've played it once or twice again to do this video, I can guarantee you it won't be so long again before I go back to play it. So, what about you? What do you think? Do you remember playing this one? What do you actually know it as? I'm interested on that one too. Comment below, let me know. And until next time, take the high ground.